Hey guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Conspire Theory. I have with me Patrick from Aliens for Beginners, one of the new shows, one of the hot young up and comers, one of the guys that's gonna, I'm glad that I grabbed his rookie card early because I feel like it's gonna be worth something in a few years. Because you're knocking it out of the park constantly, man. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for calling me young. I appreciate that. But no, thanks for your kind words. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And apologize for the listeners. I just realized that when I popped a lozenge into my mouth, it's going to screw up my talking a bit. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I'm a little under the weather, but that's okay. One of the, I'm so glad that you've joined me for the show because I really do enjoy your show. Do you mind introducing the listeners to your show, your format, just a little bit about yourself and what got you started?
Yeah, totally. Well, I started the show about a year and a half ago. I'm an older guy. I'm 59, and I knew absolutely nothing about podcasting. I was clueless. Um, I think my wife or my daughter got me a book called Podcasting for Dummies or something. And I, the way I got into it was I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I would have my 4 or 5 or 6 go to shows that I would listen to in the car at work. At work, I do a bit of driving around. So Monday morning, I'd start on my favorite, which for a long time was Jim Harold. Uh, and then I'd kind of work my way through the podcasts, and I would actually run out. Even though there's a billion zillion podcasts out there, I would run out of content in my go-to shows, and then I'd start poking around trying to find something else, and it was actually more difficult than you might think. And so, of course, I got the idea, hey, if I'm in this situation, that means there's other people in this situation. I decided I can start a podcast, and I'll just make one that is, something I would enjoy listening to. And that Aliens for Beginners podcast was born. And I started out with the intention that it was going to be a fun, uh, humorous, entertaining, informative take on aliens. And I specifically didn't want to be like a conspiracy podcast, and I didn't want to go there. That wasn't my intention. But so I had some help from my daughter. She was a communications major. She actually does this kind of stuff for a living. She helped me out early on, and she got more busy. She didn't have quite the time, and I kind of, I mean, I'll admit I've thrown the towel in like 3 times, like for real. Um, but I've always just something compelled me to go on. But I got to a point where I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I know, what I can do with my knowledge and skills, and then I'll build from there. And I literally went to my iPhone and earbuds, and I just recorded straight through, solo, just me. No editing, no nothing. I had to get something that I could turn out in one shot, and I did that for a while. Eventually, I started getting a couple of guests. I got Tim Moon. He was my first guest. Um, he's a guy. He wrote a book about Bigfoot called Tomato Fields. It's pretty popular, and that was my first interview ever. And he really gave me a lot of confidence because he said, of all the interviewers, and he was doing a shit ton of interviews at the time promoting his book. He said, of all the interviewers, you're the most astute as far as your knowledge of the book and being able to discuss the book. And that kind of built up my confidence. And so now going forward, the show is evolving. It's a learning experience. It's a journey. It's almost like a spiritual journey for me. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm getting more guests. I've been really lucky. I had you on the show. I've had a handful of really top quality guests on the show, and so I'm starting to get. I got another one coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it. And the show is getting a little more deep. It's still fun. It's still entertaining, but it's getting a little deeper. And as I'm learning as I go, as I do my research and stuff like that, I'm picking up on things that I want to address, that I want to have a voice on. And so kind of moving into that a bit. And I am starting to get into the conspiracy stuff because it's just a fact of life. Conspiracy, psyops, the nature of this reality that we live in. So yeah, I'm kind of moving. It's ever evolving, but I'm thankful for anyone that's come along for the ride. I got listeners in 27 countries. I'm really thankful for that. I mean, that boggles my mind. But yeah, that's how I got started. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I've spoken to Tim Moon on my show as well. Uh, it's very, yeah. He was definitely on a tear, I would say, because he was reaching out to everybody, and then I was one of the people that he had reached out to, and I was like, I was a bit blown away because I had heard him on other shows, and they were great interviews. And when he finally came my way, we had a good conversation. And there is something that you brought up, the point of, having actually gone over the material with the guests and then bringing it up with them. I understand to some degrees, it's like in some instances when some people approach podcasting, the interview format is usually the most easiest to turn out because it's often case the laziest because especially when someone's promoting a book or something like that, there it's usually the load bearing is on the author to sell their book, and then the interviewer, they just have to like ask probing questions, and usually it's like just talk about the book and stuff like this. But if you actually cover the material, then you can have a more in-depth interview. I remember Midwest Mythos where um, the host had talked to one of the authors of what was it, the Michael Thompson, and he had actually read the book, and they had like a more in depth, deeper conversation about that. And those kinds of shows they're a lot of fun, and it's definitely you get more out of it in reference to that stuff. So for you to actually go through the the motions on that especially for a beginner was something that you really didn't have to do. It is that sort of a step up in the right direction as far as podcasts go. It basically sets out a signal to people like me that we got to get our rear in gear in a way. And I do try to in future podcasts try to at least you know get what I can out of the book, of anyone who does have one, that so that way I can talk in depth with the guests and cover specific topics and stuff like this. And it's led to some great interviews, but it's also led to a few where I think the people were a bit stirred up, because they think I got the wrong thing out of the book than they intended.
Well,
Yes.
that's the beauty of a book. I mean, that's kind of the intention behind it, right? I mean, if you write a book, you want people to get out of it what they can. And yeah, what one kind of one of my rules, like one of my vows that I made, is if I interview an author, when I interview them, I will have read the book because, like I said, having listened to so many podcasts, it's painfully obvious when someone's interviewing an author and they have not read the book. You can tell. And so if I have an author, I'm reading the book,
Mhm.
definitely for
Yeah.
sure.
Exactly. Surface level interviews can only go so far. And even if you do read like a little bit, there is like a bit of a caveat where, then if it's apparent that you've only read so much, then the author gets, they sort of like get like an upper hand in a game of chess where then they can use well, if you had read further into my book, X, Y, and Z answers to the universe, and they could like trip you up as an interview. That's happened to me recently. And I definitely regret it, but it's sort of one of those things that, due to time constraints and stuff like that,
Mm,
it just can't be helped. But that doesn't mean that we can't have great conversations regardless. But
yeah.
I guess it just comes on, like if how well informed and knowledgeable the host is in regards to these topics, and like your show is, the title is Aliens for Beginners, and it's a lot of your solo shows are among my favorites because it's an introductory sort of into these sort of what most people dismiss as blurbs in the footnotes of these experience or stuff like the specific alien races, where they come from, and all that. I love that stuff because it's lore, and I'm big on lore. I don't care where it's coming from. I'm one of those guys that I'll consume all kinds of lore from any direction. I'll go to YouTube and I'll pull down the tabs for like um, Fallout New Vegas lore and stuff like that, and just learn all these intricate details about these, supplemental characters and video games and comic books and stuff like this. So your show definitely scratches that itch for people like me who want to learn more about the specific characters as well as talking to the experiencers themselves, and that I really do commend you for.
Thank you.
Among the aliens that you have researched so far, what would you say is your favorite one? Is it the grays, the lizard people, the tall whites, what have you? Which one really stuck out to you as, this is cool?
Oh, wow. Well, that's actually a pretty easy answer for me. It's definitely the praying mantises. Um, Hands down, hands down. And I, my first episode actually that I ever released was called the Mantids, or the Mantids for Beginners. And these are very enigmatic creatures, and a lot of people have had experiences with these beings. And I actually put a slideshow, just a simple slideshow, on TikTok a few months ago about the Linda Porter case. And Linda Porter's was an experiencer who was interviewed extensively by Linda Moulton Howe, and she was taken aboard a craft. She had a heart defect from battling rheumatic fever as a child. With her parents didn't believe in doctors, and she had to battle rheumatic fever, which likely resulted from a simple case of strep throat not being treated. But anyway, these praying mantis aliens took her aboard this craft. They took the time to show her um, this process whereby they had cloned this man's body and took his soul out of his old body and put it in this new clone. And they basically did the same thing with her because her body was defective. And even to the point that they performed an autopsy on her old body. They literally took her defective heart out, held it up, and showed her. That's pretty crazy. So these praying mantises, when you talk about lore, in they're depicted in glyphs and ancient cave art and Egyptian mythology as guides through the afterlife. They're said to be thousands of years old. They're overseers of long-term projects. Some have even said that they may possibly be artificial, intelligent or bioengineered, something along the lines that they say about the Greys. And they're understood to be, if not kind and loving, they're at least empathetic. So they can relate to their human subjects and they understand, hey, I look scary to these people. And they're said to be very patient. They've got to be, like, my impression is that they're probably very highly evolved spiritually as well, because if you're around for thousands of years, you're going to evolve spiritually. Um, but anyway, to get back to what I said about this TikTok slideshow, this slideshow got like 30 some thousand views, like 500 likes, and people were commenting, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. Oh yeah, I've seen them in my dreams. I've seen them in regression." And like all of these people had seen these praying mantises. And there's an interesting case that I read about on Linda Moulton Howe's Earth Files website. She has a huge archive of really, really good material. It's costs you $8 a month to access it, but it's well worth it. It's well worth it. And there was one case where there were these two sisters who were visited by these beings, and they called them ant heads. They just called them ant heads. Like, what else is a kid going to call them? And it was, they started so young that to them this was normal. Like, the ant heads came last night or whatever, and that they grew up with these ant heads. And the at least one of the sisters felt that she had a very loving relationship with these beings, these insectoid beings, whereas the other sister was a little more indifferent. But neither of them were harmed, from what I understand. So, yeah, they're pretty intriguing as far as extraterrestrials go. I would have to say that the praying mantises they're right up there at the top of my list.
Are you familiar with David Huggins?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was he had um, a a praying mantis was around him all the time, and when he was even when he was having his trysts with Crescent, this praying mantis would be hanging out in the corner, I guess, making sure everything went all right. It was kind of weird, but he had definitely had a praying mantis guide, or whatever.
Yeah. Looking back at that case, I am intrigued by it in the sense that it's my opinion that David Huggins, I believe that the character that David Huggins knows as Croissant was, I believe it was a peripheral, and that the actual entity that he was engaging with was the Mantis being, because it was always present. And it's my opinion that it was somehow presenting him this peripheral to engage with, to interact with, and he bonded with that. It's sort of like how we play with a cat and we'll pick up their favorite toy and play with them with that. It was sort of like, I feel like an extension or something along those natures, because the I don't know so much about the Croissant character, and that's sort of a unique type of entity type that I think is very unique to his case. If not, it's exceptionally rare. So I do wonder about that, and the other amounts of lore out there with the mantises. They're often like, they're always in the corners. They're always there, but it's like the interaction is kept to a minimum with some people. In some case, and I find that interesting. It's like they're part of the crew, but they're not always, the part of the away team, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's not a far-fetched theory because a lot of extraterrestrials, mantises included, are said to have the ability to project images, um, whether they're hologram. I don't know. I don't know how they do it technically, but they're said to be able to make you see things in a certain way, including other beings. And you reminded me of a case that I heard about. It was just on a random podcast where one of these experiencer podcasts where random experiencers come on to talk about their stuff. But this woman, she had a lot of experiences, eternal level experiences. But in one of them that she described a golden disc coming through her window at night as she lay in bed, going to the other side of her bed, and a beautiful woman appearing. And she asked this woman, or she told this woman, "I know that's not your true form," or something like that. And the woman said, "Well, if you want to see my true form, look out the window." And she turned her head and looked out the window, and there was a praying mantis. So yeah, I think you might be spot on there. And the crescent character, you're exactly right, is unlike any other alien being that I'm aware of. If you look at Huggins' paintings and her alien facial features with the long human type hair, and then basically a human body, I'm not aware of any, like I can't think off the top of my head of another being that fits that prescription. It is very unique to the Huggins case. So yeah, that's entirely possible.
Yeah, and one of the things that I mean, just looking at the body, it's like it looks like they took like a either they grew a female body and then they somehow, I guess, cybernetically attached like the face onto it because the face doesn't match the head. It looks like an odd, if we use like the character creator, in video games, it looks like someone put the wrong tab on the wrong body, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very it's disturbed. It's very off putting, and it comes off quite unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
But then, given what supposedly these entities are but whatever it is that their genetic technical prowess of, they can pretty much say and do anything. And I think that a lot of people are like the Nephilim crowd are using that as a sort of talking point to then retroactively fit their proposals onto the mythical creatures of the past, like the Minotaur and stuff like that. Like, how is a Minotaur any different than, say, the Goat Man that we hear about and that's haunting bridges?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those, it's just like a bigger, different species, but they're both like chimeras in some sort of sense, a product of genetic tampering of some by some otherworldly entity, and I find that interesting.
Well,
I
another
I don't know
thing,
what.
the within Huggins' case, like, and in all of these cases, even Linda Porter's case, there always seems to be this a certain degree of manipulation going on of the subject by the aliens. And it's like they're not being entirely upfront all the time. And it's almost like um, it's for your own good kind of a thing. But I think a lot of that, what Huggins related, I think he was being played a little bit, and I think to some degree, a lot of experiencers are being played. So, for example, when I think one of his baby that he had was Crescent was sick,
Mhm.
and like there's a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it. It's really
Yeah,
really good. Yeah,
I've seen it several times. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I know
So
what you're
what?
talking about, but
Yeah, where
please go ahead.
the baby was sick, and he was all upset, and they brought him uh, on the craft, and I guess he touched the baby. The baby was healed. Then they brought him into a room with like 50 other babies, and that were supposedly all his, and he had to touch all them to heal all them. I'm not buying that. I think they set him up. I think they were manipulating him. I think they played him somehow. To what end, I don't know, but like that
What do
doesn't
you
seem real.
expand on what you think the setup was? What do you suspect?
As far as
Yeah, what do you think that if based upon what you believe so far, what do you think their intent was, and what were they getting him to? What did they goat him into doing that maybe he thought he was doing under a false premise?
so basically, what were they getting out of it? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess
Well,
that's the big mystery. I mean, when it comes to all of these things, what are the aliens getting out of it? And I don't have the answer. Like I don't even in Huggins' case, I I wouldn't even venture to posit a theory. I have no idea.
yeah. It sounds to me like they probably didn't cross a T somewhere, and they had like a defective crop, and somehow they
Mm,
needed him to sort of fix it somehow. And I guess they just couldn't outright ask him, so they sort of like manipulated him. I'm just speculating
yeah,
that because were they all his? That is a possibility.
I mean
But then
that's
the vast number of it throws into. But then again, these as far as we know, these entities are into cloning and genetic manipulation. So maybe one was his, and the rest of them were carbon copies of something. I don't.
right.
I'm just shooting from the hips as well, and it's definitely a mysterious encounter, and it's fun to pick at and take apart.
Mm.
You know,
But
assuming that's what
Huggins is a
happened.
likable guy. He's like
Yeah,
he's such a nice guy. When you watch that documentary, you're like, oh, he's like I would hang out with him totally. But yeah,
yeah. The definitely the success of a lot of these individuals definitely comes down to their personability, and I think that because of that, a lot of this movement runs into that leaves it open for the manipulative part, not on the aliens part, but in the human aspect. And I think you delve into that with like the new age grift type of sort of that just because I'm so personable, ergo, I'm telling the truth and you should believe me. Therefore,
hmm
open up your wallet and
right.
let me sleep with your wife, X, Y, and Z. Let me manipulate and take advantage of you. And then on the alien narrative, something that I keep pointing out that I will not let go is the emotional manipulation,
hmm
where these creatures are able to induct absolute paralyzing fear. And then they're also able to invoke a sort of loving,
hmm
people like, oh, I feel so much loving energy off these guys. So very clearly, they're the good guys, and I will do
hmm
everything in my power to be complacent to their needs.
hmm
And it's like in both instances, you're being manipulated.
hmm Yeah. Linda Porter again. Going back to Linda Porter, when in
A
her
good case is a
interviews,
good case.
yeah,
It's just what it is.
uh, in her interviews with Linda Moulton Howe, towards the end, she said that she had the impression that whatever these beings were involved in with this cloning and all this, you know, scientific genetic manipulation, she had the impression that they were not supposed to be doing it, that they were kind of doing it on the down low, and that there was some overarching authority that did not allow this. And they were just kind of doing it on the down low to win again. I don't know. But yeah, there's, when you talk about the energies that these beings that can project, they can definitely project a love energy. They can make you feel good from what I understand, almost like a drug or whatever. And I've experienced that myself. Um, though I don't think it was, I mean, I think it had to do with an extraterrestrial, but not like traditional kind that you'd think of. But yeah, it's very highly documented that they can do that. But when it comes to this emotional stuff, of course, there's this whole loose thing of some of these entities feeding off of emotional energy. There's an interesting case with uh, Ted Rice. I'm sure you're familiar with that case. Masquerade of Angels. Um, I don't know if you're not, that's fine. But Carla Turner, she wrote 3 books. Her last book was called Masquerade of Angels, and it was kind of a biography of this experiencer, Ted Rice. Ted Rice is in his 80s now, and I don't know if he's still doing it, but he goes on a podcast. I think it's called Alien Talk. But this whole book was about him and his experiences. Well, now this guy was like a Southern Baptist type background. So everything that all of his experience seems to be filtered through um, this this Christian whatever Southern Baptist filter. So of course everything is angels and devils. But he had this experience in, I think, starting like in high school or maybe in middle school, where he and this girl from school who he knew but not wasn't that close to, they were taken out to like a playground or something in the middle of the night by these extraterrestrials, and these beings did some kind of a soul uh, I don't know, something where they tied their souls together. They made them soulmates or something. And from that day forward, Ted had this like overbearing, obsessive passion and love for this girl that he just couldn't understand it. But it didn't work on her end. It didn't work. So it worked on him. It didn't work on her. So he had this crazy, like obsessive, unrequited love for this girl, like all through high school and into college. And he describes the experience as being very traumatic. And where he even talked to this girl and he said, "Look, these angels, they took us out to this playground. They connected our souls. And the girl's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about." Well, in later years, he's come out and he said that when they were taken by these aliens, they were both in tubes, and there was some kind of green, misty substance in these tubes. And they took, like, these big test tubes or whatever they were in. They took like a siphon from, I think it was from her tube to his, and they siphoned some of this energy into his tube, but they didn't do it in reverse. They only did it to him. And long story short, his claim is that they did this to him in order to cause this emotional turmoil in him so that they could feed off of this this emotional turmoil. And come to find out, there's actually a term for it. It's called a love bite. So this is, I haven't delved into this a whole lot. I've just heard him talk about it, but it's really weird. So basically he's saying that these extraterrestrials initiated this in order to generate this emotional turmoil in him. And maybe there's something about him that made his emotions particularly tasty or something, that they wanted his energy. But he's saying they traumatized him in this way in order to kind of feed off that emotional energy. Pretty weird. Pretty weird.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is something else. It's the whole, I guess, sexual element of the experiencer stuff. It's, I think one of the most prolific ones is the William Tompkins book, chosen by extraterrestrials, I believe. I've, I haven't looked through his book myself. I got a copy. I'm going to, but it's pretty much the guy describes his adventures as like he's Captain James T. Kirk. You know, he basically beds nearly every single female alien he meets, and it sounds really comical. But this guy pretty
Yeah.
much laid the groundwork for, you know, the crossbreeding and the succubus type narrative that's prominent today. And I just find that sort of, this is sort of, that story is somewhat in a similar vein, though not exactly the same thing, but it
Mm,
is a sort of interesting thing where it's this sort of like romantic type passionate energy is then siphoned
mm.
and fed for whatever ends. And you know, that's interesting. That's definitely an interesting topic to talk about.
Well, I've read stuff in occult type literature that even, for example, human spirits, um, deceased human spirits, can evolve with the the help of the sexual energy of a living human, and that they can kind of move on to some sort of uh, more advanced form from just being this human spirit or ghost or whatever. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But William Mills Tompkins, I have not read his books. Um, my initial, just from my gut, and I've actually mentioned him on the podcast before. I don't know. I don't know about that guy. He's the guy who said that when the Apollo 11 astronauts landed on the moon, that some reptilians were waiting, and that they gave them the finger. So he according to William Mills Tompkins, there were reptilians had ships parked at the crater, top of this crater, and they greeted Neil Armstrong by flipping him off. I don't know. I mean, it might be, maybe. Um, and I know he also said that he had this Nordic secretary. When he said when he worked on the Apollo missions, that he worked with this Nordic secretary. So Nordic is a race of extraterrestrials, look very human, but they're very beautiful. Um, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I
Yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah.
see this advanced being working as a secretary for NASA. It doesn't add up to me. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's a lot of these. There's a lot there
yeah,
with a lot of these claims, and because of the absolute absurdity of them, it's easy to see why this stuff is sort of niche
hmm,
and tucked away. You know, not truly taken seriously.
yeah. And I'm pretty open minded, as you know. I'll entertain.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
entertain some pretty weird stuff.
yeah, and it's so many people, they want answers and they want to know, and I guess we fall into that camp, but we're sort of a bit more selective about it.
Hmm.
You know, I guess it's probably just due to the nature of the position that we're in as podcast hosts and stuff like that. That, you know, it's we're not just straight up consumers.
Right, right.
It's
Yeah.
we do have an outlet to talk to people about this stuff, and I don't know that everyone else has that, even though there are vast communities. And in some cases, when I take a peek into those communities, it's basically just people just rattling off their stories.
Mhm.
They're not really engaging in conversation. It's just more like they're just looking like just circling the just circling for affirmation.
Mhm.
And it, and if that's what you're coming for, then you're going to definitely get it, but that doesn't mean it's the most healthiest outlet to deal with whatever pressing issues that people are really having, that they are dealing with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just
I
don't know
had
what to make of it.
I had an interesting experience where um, someone, a listener, messaged me, and they sent me a great big long email, and about how much they liked the show, and they this person said they really wanted to talk to me. They really wanted
That
to
wasn't
talk
my
to me.
email, was it?
No. Did you send me that? And this no, it was a woman, and she said she's had all these experiences, and she wanted to talk to me. And I said, okay. So I emailed her back. I said, all right, let's set up a time. And I set up a time, and she on a weekend, on a Saturday, and she called me, and I'm not exaggerating. I was on the phone with her for every bit of 2 hours, 2 hours plus. And during that whole time, I may have spoken for 5 minutes total. And she told me her whole story, all of these incredible experiences, um, like mind boggling stuff that happened with her and her son. And like it was pretty overwhelming. And I said, okay, well, like what are you trying to do? Like, do you want to tell your story? Or she said, yeah, she wanted to tell her story, but she literally said that she was told by whoever, her, these aliens, her guides, whatever beings she was in contact with, to not talk to anybody until she contacted me. She ran across me, and she said she got the green light, and they told her, you can talk to this guy. And I was like, oh, okay. So she she spewed her whole, it's like the floodgates open. And then after the call, she sent me, I don't know, 5 or 6 of the longest text messages I've ever gotten in my life. Like, I still haven't read them. Um, and some more emails and stuff. And I said, look, this is what we'll do. I said, if you want to tell your story, I'm happy to do it. I would be more than happy to do it. But we're going to have to structure it some. We can't, what you just did here, you can't do that on on the show. Um, so what I did was I said we can break it down into like 3 parts, 3 episodes, and this is what we'll do. I sent her an outline. We'll do this in the first one, this in the second one, this in the last one. I sent her the outline. So I had a considerable amount of time invested in this, several hours, and poof, she's gone. Never heard from her again. And I mean, we exchanged a couple. Like I text her, "Hey, everything okay? You good?" Yeah, and that was it. So, to your point, it's almost like she just wanted to tell someone her story, and when she told me, she got it out of her system. And then I'm sitting there like, well, what do I do with this now? But it was an amazing story. I mean, it was right up there with any experiencer story that you've ever heard. But like you said, you can't just, like for me, I'm not about having someone come on and just rattle off their experiences. And, oh, that's pretty weird. That's pretty cool. Okay. I want to delve into, I need to break it down and kind of analyze it the best that we can. So I like structure. And even though these are very strange topics, that doesn't mean that we can't approach them, in a reasonable, logical way. And I think it behooves us, to do that and to approach it seriously. And it's more than, like, for example, the all the UFO videos and stuff. There are people who go out and do CE5 or whatever just to get videos of orbs and post them on social media. I don't know what the point is of that. It's like, Chris Bledsoe, um, what he's posting a lot of videos of orbs. Oh, okay. I've seen orbs. I've seen orbs in my backyard. Um, so for me, I want something more than, the orb story or the missing time story. So let's, to me, I'm like, okay, so that's your story. Let's delve into this a bit. Um, we, I think the days of seeing anomalies, all right, that's cool, but now it's time to kind of move beyond that. I think.
Yeah, there is something where I don't know what this person's creative field is, but there is a thing in the creative industry where you get an endorphin rush from telling your story, whatever it is. Like, I'm working on a comic book, right? Whenever I tell people about the comic book, I get an endorphin rush of having told the story, and then that endorphin rush seeps out of me, and then I don't have the energy to work on the goddamn book. And it's a trap that a lot of creatives run into.
Mm,
And I think that's sort of what she experienced. Was she just wanted to get it out, and then when she got it out, the endorphin rush of having told that, she got that fulfillment,
mm,
and then following up on it, turning it into something tangible that's
mm,
mass consumable for the general public, for the rest of us. That energy just simply wasn't there anymore.
mm.
And it's just one of those. That's human nature. Um,
That's an astute
the
observation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're onto
yeah.
something there for
Well,
sure.
I've dealt with it firsthand, and
Hmm.
there are in it. I do find it interesting that you got sort of that Preston Dennett recommendation, because he talks about getting, the experiences come to him and they say the aliens recommended you, so you're in the intergalactic Rolodex out there. Like right under, there's Preston Dennett and then Patrick and
Yeah,
then
right.
you and then not me. No, I guess they sort of like listen to my show. It's like, ah, shit, not that guy. He'll he's mean or whatever. But the point is that, yeah, I'm totally jealous of you right now for that.
Well, I
But
don't
the thing
know.
is no, I've
Careful what you wish for.
yeah, I understand. I've had a few exclusives as well, where you're the first outlet for people to tell their story. And there are shows out there that specialize in first time experiencers. Um, and I guess they probably know more how to deal with it than you and I.
Hmm.
But the point is that I guess it's sort of like someone needed to get something, it's that whole, I just need someone to talk to.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that's a folly that a lot of even us podcasters run into,
Hmm.
where, if you look at a lot of these live streams out there, they go for 6 hours, and what the hell is going on? It's just,
Yeah.
it turns into people just hanging out.
Hmm.
People just want to have friends and hang out with their buddies. And this sort of outlet gives them, it screeches it hits that niche. It hits that sort of, that they get something out of that. It's no different. Like hanging out for 6 hours on a live stream is no different than sitting around the bar for 6 hours
Mm-hmm.
talking with your buddies, throwing back a few cold ones. I think it's that same itch that's getting scratched.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully you and me could at least put the kibosh on it, and at least get it under an hour, and then,
Mm-hmm.
get it concise and focused and stuff like that. I mean, not that I wouldn't mind hanging out with you like for 6 hours, throwing back a couple beers, but it's like, hey, I got shit to do, and so do
Yeah,
you.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta get stuff done. But and I think that's what a lot of people did, and I believe that's what happened to you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like even just hearing you say that, it's like it's it's kind of dawning on me because honestly, I never considered that possibility of what you just said. So you've opened my mind up to a possibility on this situation because, frankly, it pissed me off. I was pretty annoyed, um,
Yeah.
and then I was like, uh, "What?" Because well, I've had this happen to me so many times, and it's something it's like a synchronicity, and I've learned, like I've experienced synchronicities my whole life, and I've learned only later in life, like the way to approach them correctly. And just because you have a synchronicity doesn't mean that you're supposed to pursue it or necessarily go down a certain path. It doesn't necessarily mean you're on the right. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. Um, and I've had these chance encounters happen so many times and just dissipate into nothing. I messaged a guy on TikTok who is involved in some really interesting esoteric stuff that has to do with uh, hidden history, hidden ancient history, and I was really intrigued by what he was saying, and I was interested in having him for a guest. So I messaged him on TikTok, and as it turns out, this guy actually knew my mother,
Hmm.
and my mother's uh, my late mother, her third husband, late husband, um, was a very prominent person um, in this field that this guy was in. And it turns out they were friends. And this guy actually knew my mother. And we were like, holy shit, this was meant to be. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
dude,
interesting.
yeah, I said, I need to, I mean, I would love to have you on my show to talk about the stuff that you're doing. And I'd like to learn more about what this guy, my mother's late husband, what he was involved in, because he was involved in some stuff, some mysterious stuff involving um, history and archaeology and stuff like that. And we was like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And we had actually we had a call scheduled that he never got on the call, and he messaged me later and he said, "Hey, I think he ended up in the hospital or something," which is totally understandable. But there was no follow up or anything. And again, this thing has kind of dissipated. And when you have something that's just so right, just feels like how clearly a synchronicity. and then it just fizzles out. To me, that's really frustrating, and I don't understand it. But what I'm learning is I it's for a purpose, and it may be a matter of timing. It may be because whatever is guiding me, and I have guides. It may not have fit their schedule. I don't know. So maybe it's something that'll materialize down the road a ways or whatever. But as like I've told you before, this is it's a learning experience. It's a growing experience as well. As a person, as a human being, and you have to learn. Patience, and what I think should happen might not be what is supposed to happen or what should happen. So I'm kind of learning to let things develop, and which is hard for me because I'm an impatient person. But yeah, so that was kind of the same along the same lines where it was like, oh, this is so perfect. Not right now.
Yeah, this field requires a lot of patience and persistence on your end as well,
Yeah.
as you now know.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, now that I've explained a little bit of human nature to you, I hope you follow back up with those individuals and loose ends, because they're ready to pick right back up. There's been several um, guests in the pipeline things just don't line up,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep a little tab and I message them, and some it's like it's been like a probably over a year or more, and then I hit them back up and it's like we're right back where we started,
Yeah.
and we're getting things running, and there's like, oh yeah, I have time now,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll schedule something out. But it's on your end, the behind the scenes, behind the curtain, we do have to practice that persistence.
Right.
And if you look at the people that are on the top, I mean, we experienced this on the beginning end of it. Imagine what the Tony Merkles and Joe Rogan by days. Imagine the stuff that they have to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
getting stuff done and making stuff happen. And but the thing is, it's sort of, I guess, it feels good to know that you've always got something going on,
Right.
because the worst thing that could happen to you is to experience apathy and to be bored. You don't want to ever be bored in this field.
Right.
There's always got to be something over the next hill, and and
Mm-hmm.
and it's good that you got that stuff going on, and I'm glad for you, because that means you've got stuff in the pipe, and there's stuff ready to come out. It's just timing.
Yeah. And there's a
So
lot. There's always something,
yeah.
over the hill, and even from a solo point of view, just in terms of the sheer volume of information that's out there. Like, there's not enough time in the day, like, for me to read everything I want to read or watch everything I want to watch. Or that's why I love Audible, because um, I can play that again while I'm driving around at work and stuff like that. But like, I've got, oh my god, I've got an hour plus video on the Galactic Federation that I still have on pause. That's, I think, going to answer a lot of my questions about the Galactic Federation, of which I am not a fan. I'm not a big fan of the Galactic Federation. And someone in again, and thank God for TikTok. I mean, it's got its issues, but I've had so many good interactions in the comments of TikTok, not only on my own posts but in other posts. And I commented on something about the Galactic Federation, and someone just commented, "Hey, check out this video." And I started playing it. I was like, "This is exactly what I was looking for on the the Galactic Federation, if it exists. This was what I was looking for,
You're
and I'm
you're the you're
still.
the only guy that I know that refers to TikTok as something other than a cringe fest. People farm it for content. All the social media drama shows, they farm it for content. You're the only guy
Yeah,
that actually gets something constructive out of it.
I love it. I love TikTok, and talking about social media, like uh, I hate Instagram. I'm shadow banned on Instagram, and my opinion of Instagram is that it's wholly controlled, with the algorithms and the shadow banning stuff like that. And when it comes to the fun stuff, which I enjoy, cat videos. I love cat videos. The fun stuff on Instagram, I enjoy that. I'm all in. But when it comes to this esoteric stuff, new age stuff, aliens, conspiracies, they're very obviously under control, and they're very obviously promoting certain narratives and squelching other narratives. Now, interestingly, I think that X is using very similar algorithms, but for different things specifically. Um, but when it comes to TikTok, and if you remember, they were trying to ban it, they were trying to get rid of it and all this stuff. My sense is that it wasn't under control, for a while. There was no control over it, and now there is some degree of control. And my sense is that they've implemented some things to appease the powers that be, enough to not, constantly be under attack. And one example, I posted a clip of my interview with Daniel, where he was talking about, basically Loosh. He was talking, basically, what he talked about was what he called the elites, keeping things in a constant state of war in order to generate, all of the fear and negative emotions which they feed off of reptilians or whatever. So it was your standard reptilian talk. Um, that clip got taken down. That got
Hmm.
me a strike. That was a community violation. So I was like, what the hell? So I went to the community guidelines, and there's actually a specific rule where you can't say anything about conspiracies about elites. So it's like there's this haphazard kind of censorship that's built into their algorithms and their AIs. And what happens is, like, the most ridiculous, stupid things end up getting strikes. And but at the end of the day, and I mean, I think I'm capped off on there now. Like, my posts will typically fizzle out after about 300 views. So that tells me either there's a cap on it, or they want me to spend money to boost my shit or something. I don't know. But at the end of the day, between all of the stuff that I'm on, which is Instagram, X, TikTok, Substack, I don't know what the hell you're supposed to do with that. I don't know how you get a following on there. Facebook, all this stuff. TikTok has been, for me, it's been my best experience. Go figure.
Yeah, I guess this would be a good place to wrap up.
All
This
right.
was a great show. I had a lot of fun.
We didn't get to the conspiracy theories. We'll have to get to that next time.
Well, I think those last 5 minutes were conspiracy enough.
Yeah,
You
somewhat.
know,
Yeah.
so I guess we'll do a follow up. I'd love to come back onto your show
Oh, yeah,
and
totally.
discuss, ghosts and dreams and stuff like that,
That
fun
sounds
stuff like
good.
that. There's a lot that we could talk about, but we're gonna probably have to do it on your end next time.
Gotcha.
And you're welcome back anytime. The let everybody know where they can find you and what to look for.
Okay. My podcast is called Aliens for Beginners Podcast. It's available pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. I have a YouTube channel that's pretty much brand new. I've had it for a year or more. I just never actually used it. I just recently started using it, so there are some videos available on the YouTube channel, Aliens for Beginners, the podcast. It's a work in progress, so don't be surprised when you go on there and I got like 17 followers. It's new. I'm on TikTok at Alien for Beginner, X at AFB Podcast. I'm on Substack. What else? I'm on Facebook. Not much activity on Facebook. But my primary one is TikTok. I'm a TikTok guy.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and we'll have a talk with you later. Thank you.
Hey, it's been fun. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy it. Happy to come on anytime, and I'll reach out to you, and we'll do this again on my show.